I'm Pat Miguel Tomeno. I'm the Associate Director of Socially Responsible Investing here at Zevin Asset Management. We're committed to socially responsible investing here at Zevin. That means pushing companies on key environmental, social, and corporate governance issues. Now more than ever, especially amid political uncertainty and regulatory uncertainty, stock investors have an opportunity to work with companies, push them in the right direction on key issues, and have a positive social impact. So we're actually engaged with portfolio companies on 3 different issues: economic justice, climate change, and civil rights. And it's been a busy year, so I want to update you on our work in 2016. On economic justice, like many folks, we're focused on inequality. That's in our world, that's the spread between a CEO compensation and what folks make further down the pay scale in a company. CVS Health is a company where that spread is particularly egregious, so we raise that issue with the company. We try to get them to disclose that spread as a numerical ratio, and then explain to investors why that ratio grows in a given year. So that's going to continue as a dialogue going forward, but we're keeping pressure on through the shareholder proposal process. We also worked with companies last year in a range of sectors on climate change. Standard practice in the past has been for companies to pull their greenhouse gas reduction targets out of thin air. It's not going to cut it anymore. The world is basically working toward a common set of goals on greenhouse gas emissions based on the Paris Climate Agreement. And we're going out into the markets and urging companies to harmonize their own goals with Paris. And what that has meant is engagement with TJX, CVS, PepsiCo, and other companies, getting those companies to harmonize their goals and make them based on science. In the case of PepsiCo, that company, after our engagement in a shareholder proposal, ended up improving its greenhouse gas reduction target to make it science-based, and it also improved its approach to sourcing renewable energy. But the work we do in these sectors outside of oil and gas won't matter much if the oil giants don't really clean up their acts and reassess their business models in line with the terrible impacts of climate change. So we filed a range of shareholder proposals, taking advantage of the fact that some of our clients have legacy holdings in those dirty oil companies, to ask companies like Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and ExxonMobil to start to do analyses of their business models in light of climate change. And that's a very slow-going and adversarial process. ExxonMobil, for example, spent most of the year fighting attorneys general around the country about claims that it had basically hid the risks of climate change. But then there are surprises and momentary victories. For example, ExxonMobil, at the end of that year, ended up appointing a climate scientist to its board of directors. And that's something that Zevin and other stakeholders have been asking for several years. Is it going to solve the dirty oil problem? Not all at once, not by a long shot. But it's a big victory at a company that has an immense impact on the climate. Finally, on civil rights, we pushed forward work that Zevin has been pioneering to tease out the investment risks and the impacts that companies have around mass incarceration and its racial justice implications. We made that work concrete this past year, working with companies like Target, Starbucks, and Intel to ask those companies about prison labor that might be in their supply chains. There's terrible reputational risks associated with prison labor that's not been overseen and has labor standards risks. So companies can be doing more to watch their supply chains, and we're working on that issue going forward. And another issue that we've been working with respect to mass incarceration is fair hiring policies. Companies have a real opportunity to amplify their talent pool when they go out into the market for workers. They should be looking at folks who are returning citizens from incarceration, who have something to offer society and can help break the cycle of incarceration that ends up destroying economic value and opportunity in America. So we're getting companies to focus on improving their policies, and when, as Amazon did, they exhibit poor practices, as when Amazon's contractors this past year in 2016 were dismissed for prior contact with the criminal justice system, we're calling out that issue, and we actually co-filed the first shareholder proposal on that issue this past year in 2016. And that's just to name a few highlights. We're also engaged with companies on human rights risks and conflict areas, on the gender, racial, and ethnic pay gap, and on ongoing efforts to improve company reporting on sustainability and key social impacts. So that's an update of what we've been doing with companies to raise these issues and use your investor voice for positive social impact. I hope that you'll read more of our update and our updates going forward, and that you'll contact me with any questions you have about your investments and the social impacts they have.